Okay. Welcome to the May 31st Curriculum Committee meeting. We will begin with the approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and now we have approval of the minutes for the April 27th meeting. Did everyone have an opportunity to read over the minutes?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay, we will now go to instructional resources for purchase.
I'd like to say good morning to everyone. We bring one of our items for renewal in the instructional resource area. This is our learning management system, Canvas. Canvas has been recommended from the state as our learning management system, and this is our 4th year of participation with Canvas. We moved from Moodle 4 years ago. We've continued to implement this, and our teachers continue to become stronger in using this as they teach our students and manage their resources. We receive a state contract price of $3.74 per child. That price has not increased for the upcoming year. So in order to implement this, for the upcoming year, this cost does exceed $100,000 and would need to go to the board for approval.
Was this cost item included in the fiscal year 2018-19 budget,
Yes, sir.
Dr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Was there an increase over the previous year, or has it maintained the same price?
They have maintained the same price. This is what, and the second page talks about year 1 and year 2, and we've been able to keep that same price of $3.74. The state has negotiated that with Canvas.
Does the state help pay for this in any way?
No, ma'am, they do not.
So this comes out of our local budget?
It does come out of our local. And instructional resources from the state. Yes.
Are there any other questions?
No.
Make a motion to approve the funding for Canvas. Yes. Recommendation to submit for approval to the full board for the purchase of Canvas.
Okay. Is there a second?
Need a second first.
I need a second. I believe Mrs. Helms offered a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Okay, next is academic programming.
For information, we bring information to you this morning regarding some academic programming that the school system is working toward. We have the school performance office here who will be sharing information on the attachments that you have regarding what they're looking for in improving programs for the upcoming year. So I'm going to turn it over to this team. Go ahead, sir.
So, so that the curriculum committee knows, we have taken this year to really kind of evaluate some of our current academic programming. And the first one that's coming to your attention for information and for feedback is relative to South Providence. We have had discussions with the board about South Providence, and I want to go on the record. I was asked yesterday by a staff member, are you going to recommend that we close South Providence? That rumor has started for some reason. The answer is no. We are not looking at closing South Providence, and I want to be public about that. However, we are looking at revamping our current programming at South Providence. We had hired a third-party consultant to come in this year and really evaluate and take a look at what we've historically been doing at that school. And so that the curriculum committee knows, because I've learned this just this year, there are actually 3 programs at that school. The one program is our day treatment program, and these are for students that have severe mental, social, emotional needs that need a very specific setting to help them. The second program is an alternative learning program that are for kids that have no discipline issues. These are students that the normal day-to-day comprehensive look, feel of high school just isn't working for them. That's a graduate diploma track program. We really don't have a name for it. Students have to apply to get in, and they're there for a year. And it gives them a very specific setting that they can utilize with a very minimal amount of staff to help them navigate their experiences in school. And then the third program is our discipline program, where we have students that are there for long-term suspensions or there for disciplinary assignments. And we've really taken a hard look at the teaching and learning aspect of that program as well. So I asked the school performance office and Ms. Morris to really help take a look at if we wanted to do something creative for the students that attend this school and really revamp the school to make it more educational, what could we do? And so coming to you today are three kind of ideas based on these three programs. And the first one we're going to start with is our alternative school at South Providence. And this is the program that currently works with students that are there for long-term suspensions or disciplinary infractions. So I'd like for Mr. Baisden to take lead on that one, and he'll update the committee on kind of what we're thinking about for next year.
Good morning. What we hope to do moving forward at South Providence with our students that are long-term is to focus on three areas during that period of time where they are serving an academic placement due to their behavior, either a series of behaviors or one specific behavior. The three areas we want to focus on are the academic program for the students that are there, and we have some ideas about how to enhance that program. The second thing we want to do is provide some much needed social and emotional support for students while they are there. And that would be that the current draft, the current proposal has large group settings, group counseling, and the opportunity for individual one-on-one counseling, and the opportunity for some psychotherapy depending on the child's needs. Then the third aspect of it, so you've got your academic programming, you've got your wraparound services. The third aspect of it, which we believe is just as important, is to truly map out the transition from the comprehensive school into the alternative school with transition times built in, and then truly map out the transition back from the alternative school back to the general population. And our draft includes supports for children as they move in to help them acclimate, but more importantly, it includes some supports for students once they move out into the school, and there are supports in place for them. And there are timelines, there are minimums, and there's an opportunity for even for those to go longer than the minimum required. The one element that is related to the transition plan back from the alternative school to the comprehensive school would be some timelines associated with, for lack of a better word, a probation period. Okay, I don't like the term probation, but it's an easily accessible term. So if I have been placed at South Providence for an extreme behavior, when I move back to the comprehensive school, it's a conditional return based on my success for a period of time once I get back. The details about how the academic program is played out are in your paperwork, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about those as well.
I'll just add to what Mr. Baisden said. I think the key issues here, number one, historically, when a student is referred, and if I'm incorrect about this, please correct me. Historically, when a student is sent to South Providence for a disciplinary issue, they're typically there for a semester. And what we really should be doing is, according to the code of conduct, and is looking at a 45-day placement or whatever placement that is there. If the student is not ready to go back to their home school after that 45 days, then they will not go back. They will continue to stay. But we've never really had a evaluation process for our students to evaluate their transition back, their transition in, and when they're there, how to make sure they're not losing instructional ground. Typically, our students in that program are in a computer-based program on a one-on-one setting. We really need to be teaching face-to-face and using the technology in a blended way. So this issue of transition in, transition out, and the difference between a long-term suspension and a disciplinary assignment, these are some things that we're exploring. In this particular case, we actually would like to go to the policy committee for a student alternative assignment policy, which we need to develop, I guess, from scratch, that would really govern all of these processes and procedures. So we're happy to take questions.
I have a couple questions. Mr. Baston, if do you have numbers as far as how many students we have right now in long-term suspension?
No, sir, I don't have those in front of me.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. The current model in a long-term suspension case, the student is still in the home school until the hearing, which determines they'll be going to South Providence.
If they appeal, yes, sir. Their placement's immediate unless they appeal, and then they do get to stay at their school until the hearing is held for the appeal. Yes, sir.
Okay. And under the proposed desired future state long-term suspension, it also says that a hearing will be conducted. Is it anticipated the lag time before that hearing, they would be at South Providence, or they would still be at their home school until that hearing is held?
Anticipated we would hold their initial hearing
Right.
to determine whether or not they are being long-term suspended. That would be held within the confines of their first suspension.
Mhm.
The hearing that's causing the delay now is the appeal hearing based on a decision. And Ms. Morse can offer more advice on the details related to the hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, the part of the lag time is in the structure that we have put in this district for the disciplinary hearings. A student is entitled to a due process hearing prior to the long-term suspension. This district has placed that at the board level. A lot of districts use a hearing officer, and the board is just strictly the appeal. You are the fact-finding hearing in our district, which causes a delay because the student is entitled to that prior to being assigned under federal law. So that's under case law. So that's part of why we have the delay. And we're trying to put another layer in there, which would leave you to be truly the appeal and then have the fact-finding hearing so that we can expedite these procedures. So we don't have kids being long-term suspended or suspended for 6 days going back to school, then being long-term suspended. That's not good for anybody.
Okay.
So,
But let me
so
go.
our goal,
Yeah.
one of the objectives with this revamping would be that we no longer have, am I hearing you correctly, that we would no longer have that lag? And when we send this to policy, we could create, or take away a layer so that they're not allowed back into the school until a decision has been made?
We're actually in effect adding a layer, but yes, it would create a
Expedite it.
smoother process. It would
Okay.
expedite it.
We would differentiate the terminology between a disciplinary assignment and a long-term suspension.
Right.
We would have to do that in policy to make sure that those are the two pathways to assign.
What offense qualifies for what? But again, I go back to the initial hearing under long-term suspension. Do you anticipate that being almost an immediate, like the next day or as quickly as possible, so they're not in limbo? I'm referring to the desired future state.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that's almost an immediate process as far as that initial hearing for long-term suspension.
Yes, sir. Of course, the school would need a little time to gather the information, but
Right.
with in the high schools, the suspensions leading into long terms are 6 days. So our goal is for all of those hearings to be held before the suspension is over. So there's no break and there's no return. So yes, I can't say the next day, but they would be
Right.
expedited. and held
I
very
guess what
quickly.
I'm looking for is the students not sitting in the classroom or the class where the infraction occurred, where everybody gets the impression nothing's going to happen.
Yes, sir.
And
Yeah.
then you see where I'm going
Yes,
with
sir.
that?
Yes, sir. And our school level administrators can assign, our high school administrators can assign up to 6 days. So the child is definitely out of school for those days, and the middle
Right.
school is 10. Our goal would be to hold the placement hearing before the
That
child
6-day
returns.
window. Great.
So hopefully that's the solution you were looking for.
I assume policy will also address the student that goes under either its DA or long-term suspension, and then, according to everybody's estimation, successfully completes the program, is reassigned back to their home school, but then has a reoccurrence.
Yes, sir.
So multiple offenses, if you will, would be addressed as well.
Yes, sir. There's language in the proposal that has timelines and minimal consequences well, for example, one of the things we're proposing is within the first 15 days, the child returns to their school. Any offense that would lead to what we would call a change in placement, either ISS or OSS, could possibly lead to an immediate return to South Providence.
Okay.
So that would be one example of a way to respond to behaviors that return once a child goes back to school.
Great.
Okay, so we are going to have written language, most likely out of policy, that once you return to school, there will be consequences that would send you back to South Providence.
We would hope so. Yes, ma'am. Our proposal does have conditions associated with the
Okay.
return with 15, 30, and 45-day timelines.
So let's walk this through. So a student is given a 45-day suspension and sent to South Providence. There is an opportunity for a 45-day suspension to be cut to 15 or 30.
Yes, ma'am. The proposal we have now is that would be if a child was sent for a disciplinary reassignment, which is for some of our less serious offenses. That would not be in place
And
for
where
a
is
child
that
that is
list?
long-term.
Where is that list?
We're working on that list.
Okay.
I have a draft. The senior staff hasn't seen the draft yet, so it's one that we're developing.
And will
right
that
now.
go to policy? So that it matches the handbook?
It would be part of the Code of Student Conduct.
Okay.
That would go to the board for review and policy committee. for
So
review.
so you're saying there's a potential pathway for a 45-day suspension to be cut to 15 or 30?
We have, the proposal has check-ins at 15, 30, and 45 days, at which time, based on the child's offense going in, and their success at South Providence, and their success with their academics, and with their attendance, and with their participation in the groups, yes, ma'am. That
Well,
is.
and again,
the
I think this
proposal.
is why we have to differentiate the language between a long-term suspension and a disciplinary assignment. Because what Mr. Bazin just described is the process that you would use for a disciplinary assignment, where there are check-ins. These are your less severe incidents or behaviors that may not warrant a long-term suspension. A long-term suspension of 45 days under a long-term suspension would be a 45-day placement. It would not be a 45 cut to 30 or a 45 cut to 15. That would only be in place for your students that are there under a disciplinary assignment.
And you're going to address the situation we run into before where it's right at the end of the school year. What do we do about the next school year? Do they continue the 45 days? Do we wipe the slate clean? And as well as for a disciplinary referral?
We'll partner with legal. There's some new language in the law that does give us some flexibility.
Yeah, the law only allows certain suspensions to carry over into the next school year. So on most suspensions, it's done at the end of the school year by state law.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
When is this going to take place? Because the handbook's already been printed because we're almost in June. So when are we anticipating that this is going to take effect?
I believe we would like to see elements of this start as early as next fall. One of the things that we've worked on with the Code of Conduct is, since it is administrative guidelines, it's a more living document and more flexible. And depending on policy and depending on how quickly as a staff and a team we can move, I believe there are elements of this that can be put in place as early as next fall.
And when you say that, you mean August?
Yes, yes, for the start of the school year.
In the new future state, you mentioned a hearing officer, an additional layer. Just for what it's worth, are we talking about someone different or somebody gets something added to their plate? Because I would just throw this out there to think about. Perhaps the principal at South Providence would be a good resource to play a part in that role.
Yes, sir. I don't know that we've identified that, but that's an excellent idea.
I will say this, all of these proposals are relatively cost neutral, and we're not asking for additional staff on any of these. So we would not be adding additional people.
So currently, if I understand the current process for long-term suspension, the principal makes the recommendation to, I guess it would come to Dr. Faust and
Yes,
Michelle right now,
Yes, Dr. Breedlove.
and Dr. Breedlove if it's
High school.
high school. If it's middle school, it comes to you, Mr. Baston.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it doesn't come to Dr. Faust?
It comes to Dr. Faust. Dr. Faust makes the decision.
He-
Dr. Faust is the one who's the superintendent's designee for these decisions.
Okay. And Michelle, does that not, with you being involved in the process, does that not cause some kind of conflict if the thing escalates?
Well, typically, if we go to an appeal where there's an attorney involved, we hire or we use other staff from my department to play different roles so that we don't have a conflict. My involvement is to ensure that due process has been handled, which is similar to what the board's responsibility is in these. So, we've involved other counsel where there is a conflict.
Okay, so you can work around that. Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other questions, Mrs. Helms?
I have one last comment, and this is not part of the realm of responsibility of the curriculum committee, but I would consider for senior staff and of course the facilities committee to consider, if we're going to continue to use South Providence, that building is going to need a lot of work. We have a gym that's not air conditioned. We have room or window air conditioners, basically old hot water, steam heat. For some reason, I was trying to recall that there are some floor structural issues, but I may not be correct on that. So that was my question. How many students that we anticipate for disciplinary action or long-term suspension? Because we're going to have to consider some considerable capital investment in that building.
That has come up with the facilities committee. We've talked about kind of looking at a long-term plan for that facility. In the other two programs we're going to talk about, we're actually talking about relocating students outside of that facility in order to really kind of explore strategically how we want to use that building in the future. But we all agree if we're going to have to stay there, then we've got to figure out something to do. But unfortunately, we're limited with our spaces. And so trying to be creative on how we might do that, that's what we're kind of looking at for long term.
Okay. So this was information only, but you're going to prepare and continue working on your documents as far as what offenses belong where, and this will go to the next policy committee.
Yes.
Okay.
The second program that we want to talk briefly about is the day treatment program. These are students that is a very small number of students that are middle and high school that are at South Providence on the lowest level of that school that are there because they need severe assistance with mental, social, emotional health. Ms. Morris has kind of taken the lead on evaluating this, and so I'll turn it over to her.
Okay. Good morning. As Dr. Houlihan mentioned, this is a very specialized program that is different than our other programs that we don't have as much control over the program itself, its locations and those things. Currently, we have students at all grade levels in day treatment. Our elementary program is housed at Porter Ridge Elementary, and the middle and high program is, as Dr. Houlihan mentioned, in the lower level at South Providence. And it's a specialized program for students with severe mental health issues who require both therapeutic and behavior intervention for recovery and to be able to function in an educational environment. We have a long-standing and successful partnership with Alexander Youth Network in providing this program. Right now, students are, to enter the program, they're diagnosed with a mental health issue, disturbance that impairs their ability. And this is the least restrictive setting for them to be in. And obviously that's where we would continue. Some of the needs that we foresee for this program is more the involvement of the home school in transitioning in and transitioning out, as well as providing increased academic services. Obviously, with these students, the vast majority of their day is therapeutic, and then there are academic needs as well. But we need to find a way to bridge that for students who return so they don't slip back into earlier patterns when they come back. So our goal in this program is not to change the program extensively, because as I said, it's very strictly regulated, but to increase opportunities for students to engage with their home school, transitioning in and out, and also to have opportunities to increase their access to educators and educational services, as well as the educational environment. So our hope is to move this onto a school campus. We've looked at locations, but right now we're working with Alexander Youth Network and the state to certify another location to place this program at, so that we can have bridge those gaps that are in the program currently.
And the location that we're looking at strongly considering is Porter Ridge Middle School.
Yes.
Or the Porter Ridge campus. You have Porter Ridge Elementary is serving the day treatment, and they do a really good job in that program of, as Ms. Morris said, of when the students are ready, of slowly but surely reintroducing them to a more generalized setting and transitioning back. That helps that transition out. We can't do that at South Providence right now. So the idea is to look at Porter Ridge High School, middle school in the back, or middle school in the back of that campus, where we have space with mobile units and a much better design to have access to the general campus as well when they're ready.
And the benefit of that location would allow our programs at both the elementary and the middle and high to collaborate, to engage in PLCs, as well as give us more access to regular educators and not just special educators to come to those schools from the various buildings.
So one of the questions that I had is, obviously the middle school and the high school is getting ready to go under construction for the bond work. And a lot of mobile classrooms are being removed. And at our last facilities meeting, there was a plan to remove a large number of MCRs from that campus, from Porter Ridge Middle School. Has there been any discussion with the facilities department? Have you collaborated with facilities, or does this need to be sent to facilities to see if this is even a good placement for this program, considering the middle school and high school both will be under construction?
Dr. Faust and Mr. Strickland have been in conversation about this, and we do still believe that this is a viable location.
The number of mobile units that came to the facilities committee did not include these. These would remain. So that number that was presented did not include any of the ones that would be leaving for this particular program. So that's not an issue.
Michelle, do you have an idea of what kind of student population we're talking about? How many on the high, middle, and elementary?
Our contract with them is a minimum of 7. So it's a very small population of students.
Okay.
I don't know how many are in there currently, though.
Okay. This kind of reminds me of the old self-contained classrooms, on which unfortunately my family has experience with. And some of the things from a parental perspective on this is you have an issue of these students being segregated away from the general school population at meals, at recess, at breaks. And again, I know from personal experience that causes resentment, feelings of, a lot of feelings to deal with that, we're different, we're segregated away from the regular school population and very easy targets for ridicule. And particularly if you're putting high school age students on the middle school campus in a contained setting, I don't know what the plan is for interaction. They would come in and they would sit away from all students as far as lunchtime. They had their own recess at that end of the field or the area. And so here we are trying to integrate these kids back into the normal population, but yet they are segregated, and it's very, very, what should I say? It's very clear to the rest of the school population that they are different. And I'd just say that causes a lot of extra things that have to be dealt with. And I just, bring that perspective to it.
And that's exactly what we're trying to address with this plan, is to ensure that those things are addressed and there is more interaction. And that's the benefit of being able to have the students interact. Being on the campus location like that, the high school students would not be interacting with middle school. They'd be interacting with high school and those things. They may be physically on the middle school campus, but they would be bridging over that property over to the high school. And that's I think our concern right now with it in the lower level at South Providence is they're not getting that interaction.
We haven't gotten there yet. I'm not convinced that Porter Ridge's middle school and high school, considering some of the challenges we've had at that campus this year, I'm not sure that I'm personally prepared to add another layer at the school during bond construction. Were you saying that there's 7 students so middle school and high school, is it 7 and 7 or 7 total?
Our contract says 7. I don't believe there's even 7 total in the program at South Providence currently.
So the
it's
middle
one-
school, it's middle
That's
and high
middle and high,
added together.
correct.
Added together.
Yeah.
So would that be one mobile classroom to have the middle school and high school together?
If the goal would be to separate middle and high school so that you're focusing on the instructional needs and being able to differentiate better than to have middle and high school students together.
I know that when we were, in the throes of writing the bond and trying to get the bond passed, it's already going to be a challenge for the 1,400 or 1,600 kids we have going to Porter Ridge Middle School, let alone, adding a new program there in the midst of the construction process. And like I said, I know we haven't gotten there yet, so I want to piggyback with the Learning Academy. And that's going to be our next discussion. If we are going to propose moving the Learning Academy out of South Providence, wouldn't there be room to bring the day treatment to the upper level of South Providence? There's going to be plenty of room at South Providence.
We haven't gotten there yet on the Learning Academy.
But unfortunately, we had this discussion first. And so I just want, assuming everyone read their packet, I just want to offer that as a discussion that if there's going to be movement out of South Providence, then we're not limited to the lower level, keeping students in the lower level at South Providence. So I just want to offer that for food for thought.
And just for the committee's information, Dr. Breedlove was just able to ascertain there's 5 students currently in the
5.
day treatment in South
Okay.
Providence.
And that's middle and high added to get total. Okay. But your proposal, again, you've worked with facilities, and how many MCRs are you allocating to day treatment?
I believe the discussion was 2, but if the population continues to be this small, it may not be necessary for 2. But I believe Dr. Faust and Mr. Strickland have been having
That
this
is correct,
conversation.
2.
Well, you might also bump up if there's only 5. I'm sure Medicaid has some requirement or allowances for how much staff they will allow. They may not give you sufficient staff to break up if there's only 5 of them, high and middle school. you might have to combine them just because they're only going to give you 2 staff members to monitor or to work with all the kids. I don't know what the ratios are, but it may not be, they may not let you break it up because there may not be enough of a population.
That's true. I think Mr. Strickland had informed me that we were looking at a minimum of 2 mobile units being there.
Okay.
We will continue to evaluate that, and as we go through the summer, and we'll be happy to come back for a further discussion if needed, but that's kind of the recommendation as of today.
So do you have a timeline for moving this program? Is this, what is your timeline for moving this program?
The goal would be to move it for the fall. The problem is there is an extensive certification process through the state that has to go through as well.
Yeah. So in other words, our ideal state would be to have this moved by August, but we have to work with the state and other agencies to get this location certified, and we don't know the timeline on their end yet.
Would the Alexander Youth Program also have to have any, or do they have a voice in this movement, or is it just the state's decision?
Well, it's their program is our contract with them has state criteria for the location. So we're working with them. I mean, they're not, as long as it's certified, I don't think that they have a concern as to the location. I think they've had discussions with there's a monthly committee.
Okay. So has there been a discussion with them that we would be moving that program, that you're considering moving this program? Do they even know we're looking at this?
They do.
They do. And what about the staff at Porter Ridge? Have the principals at Porter Ridge Middle School and Porter Ridge High School, have they been brought in on this discussion to add this to the campuses?
The principal at the middle school has been made aware due to the placement. I do not believe that the principal at the high school has been brought into this loop yet.
Because the transition would happen at the high school, right?
Yes. For the high school. Yes, for the high school students.
Okay. So Dr. Patience, there has been a discussion, but Dr. Harris, there has not been a discussion. Okay.
I think that's fundamentally because of the location of the actual MCU. The mobile units are at the middle school, and so.
But I think your transition process would be to bring the high school students
Yes, we
into
still
the
need to
high
loop in
school.
Dr. Harris.
So I think we still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we're still evaluating this. We were bringing this to the committee as an FYI. We're not there yet, and we really don't know the timeline of the state certification, and that's where we are.
I definitely don't think we can rush this, considering that, we are dealing with, 5 to 7 or 5 to 10 students with mental health needs. And I think dealing with construction and construction equipment, construction workers, there's going to be a lot going on those 2 campuses for a long time. And I'm not sure that this is the best time. Either we need to bring them up in South Providence on the next program we're going to discuss, or we need to hold off until after and revisit this once bond construction is complete.
We'll be happy to come back if we want to schedule an early August curriculum committee meeting before the start of the school year, and we'll be happy to come back and have further discussion with this committee about kind of our idea. Let us continue to evaluate this during the months of June and July, and come back with a recommendation.
Due to the planned construction at the middle school
And high school.
and considering the middle school, do we anticipate classrooms being displaced during that so that they will need to use some of the mobile classrooms? Some are going to be removed. Will some be needed for classrooms that will be temporarily displaced because of the construction?
Well, some are used as classrooms now, so I would
Right.
assume that would continue through the construction process.
Okay.
But a very large number, and if my memory could be off, but I think more than 50% of the mobile classrooms were approved to be removed at the last facilities meeting.
Up to, yeah.
Up to 14. So that, that's more than half of the MCRs were already approved to be taken off of that campus. So,
Okay.
and again, I'm not sure that that was all taken into consideration.
Yeah, I just don't want to see anything get moved off and then we
Mhm,
decide
and then
we
we
are
need
going to
it
move the
back.
program here and then we got to move them back.
Okay.
Based on my discussions with the facilities team, this program consideration was considered
Okay.
in that decision.
Okay. So we will table this until August.
We'll be glad to, what I would ask is that we have a curriculum committee meeting in early August before the beginning of the school year in case we are at a point where we can recommend moving this. We don't want to wait until the end of August when school has started.
But in the beginning of August, I would assume that you would want to take this to the full board, and you don't want to risk this not making it to the August board meeting so that the full board can participate in this discussion.
If the committee would like for it to go to the full board, we can. It doesn't require board approval, I don't believe. It's very similar to changing a program in EC, which doesn't require board approval. But if the committee would like for it to go to the board for discussion, we certainly can do that.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Okay, that was for information only. We will move now to sole source material
Oh, we
resources.
have one more program.
Two more.
Oh, two more?
The last program at South Providence we wanted to briefly discuss is, and Dr. Breedlove, remind me what we currently call that program.
We're calling it Union County Learning Academy.
But what do we call it now?
Oh, the program that we have at Hallway.
Oh, okay. So we don't have a name. Okay.
We don't.
So this is the third program is the program for students where really the idea of a comprehensive high school is just not working for them. They need a different kind of a setting, a different kind of an approach to curriculum and instruction, and a different approach to teaching. These are students that are heavily involved in hands-on learning, major CTE efforts. These are a lot of our kids there participate in our CTE department. And so the idea was to look at how are other school systems using this alternative setting to make sure that students are graduating highly successful. Dr. Breedlove and Mr. Basin went and visited a school at a neighboring county that's doing this and doing it very well, and came back with this idea of creating what we call a Union County Learning Academy. This is not, quote unquote, a new school. This is not a new school building or a new school accountability code. This is really taking a look at how do you revamp teaching and learning to be very much more project-based and problem-based learning. When staff and I discussed this earlier in this semester, we were really looking at trying to relocate this program to another school that has access to greater CTE resources. Just yesterday, we had further discussion, and we believe we need to take about a full year, if not at least next semester, to really evaluate two things. Number one, the right school location to put this in. And number two, what we're describing here, when you move to a project-based or a product-based curriculum, that's going to take an overhaul, number one, of your curriculum, and number two, of the training of your existing staff. And the team came to me yesterday and said that they do not believe we are going to be in a position to move this program next year. They believe we need to keep it at South Providence for at least one more year to really make sure we do this right. And so Dr. Breedlove has taken lead on this. This is a concept. We wanted to kind of get your thoughts on it. But Dr. Breedlove, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. As a former teacher administrator at multiple schools in the district and speaking with principals throughout the district, there is a clear need that we have for a true alternative learning environment. Every principal can name students in their building that struggle to fit into this traditional model in which we have. And what happens for many of these students is that they're really not behavior issues, but because they're not engaged in the learning, their behavior it manifests into poor behavior, poor attendance, and poor academic achievement. So that's really a 30,000-foot view of the type of program that we want to create to re-engage those students back into the love of learning. And so as Dr. Houlihan sort of described, this need is there. What works and what doesn't work at South Providence? Well, what doesn't work is the traditional environment, the drill and kill, all right, that we do. We don't set out to do that, but that's typically what happens many of the times, just to get through the material. Well, what does work? Well, what we found is the small setting works and the hands-on learning. This past year, South Providence, and excuse me about my voice, it's going in and out. What we found is that we introduced, and thanks to Mr. Howard and Robert Filter, we introduced small engines repair at South Providence. Yeah. That is the one class in which every student wants to take. You know why? Because it's hands-on, it's product-based. Every day they see an accomplishment. All right, they sit, they learn, and then they go into the lab, and then they work on a product, the engine. And at the end of this semester, they built this awesome mini bike that they were able to sell. I don't know if anybody saw the picture.
I saw a picture of the principal riding it down the road.
It is immaculate. And these kids did it with their own hands. And that is what this is all about. It's product-based learning. It's engaging. And so before you see we just called it Union County Learning Academy. All right, and then it's UCLA. It's taking that concept and spreading that out across multiple pathways. If you look here, the purpose of the program basically, and the mission and the vision, is re-engaging students so that they graduate on time and they earn back the love of learning. The criteria for getting into this program is going to be application-based. I think that's an important feature in anything that we do. It needs to be an application, because when a student applies and they get accepted, that means something. That means they're getting something that others may not be getting. And so right then and there, it's a restart for many of our students who are not engaged. So this application process, we want to find those students that are truly not the discipline issue, but just they're students that are, for lack of better terms, struggling to find this pathway in school. The transition into into and out of the program is yearly. This is not something that a student would come into for 45 days and leave. They're in this for a year. And that is also important because students need consistency. All right, they need to be a part of something for some length of time before they exit the program. It is both a 28 and a 22 credit. The concept is students can earn a 28 credit diploma, a regular diploma from Union County Public Schools, and not a CASP diploma, which is our 22 credit diploma. So they have the option of going both. Sometimes students may be so far behind that they need the 22 credit because of their age out of Union County Public Schools before they can graduate. The design of the academic program, Dr. Houlihan mentioned a problem-based learning environment. We're also looking at cross-disciplinary units where we take science and math and English and social studies or civics and embed those into units that solve problems. And so students are working across curricular concepts to solve problems and to build a product. So they are learning their standards-based instruction in English, math, science, and social studies at the same time of creating a product. Portfolios are a great idea. Bringing in a graduation project for students that are seniors and having them present out what they learned over the past 4 years as part of this program. So these are the concepts that our staff has generated on an idea for re-engaging students across our district to help them not just graduate, but to re-engage with learning.
Three things to build on what Dr. Breedlove said. Number one, because of the limited space at South Providence, we have to basically cap the number of kids that can come there. I don't know what the number is, but I think it's 20 or 25.
We would
Maybe
like
less
to
than
do,
that.
we would like to do probably, let's say 15 per class. All right, so a maximum of 60 students in the program as a whole. It's high school at this time only, not middle school until we can get through and make this successful.
But again, because of the space at South Providence, we believe that the need for this is larger than what we're currently serving. And that's partially as to why we're probably looking at a different kind of a placement or a facility like a regular school that has space. That's the first thing. The second thing is Dr. Breedlove was describing kind of this level of teaching and learning and what we should be doing. The model he's describing, to be honest with you, I'd love to see that in any school in this county in terms of product-based, problem-based, and integration. That's maybe a longer-term goal, but this approach would give us a great way to pilot that effort next year. And then the third one, I can't remember, but anyway. But Dr. Breedlove did a good job. You know, I think, again, originally we thought we would try to relocate this for next year, but I don't think we're going to be an ability to do that for the reasons I mentioned. But we really want to take this and do it the right way and really evaluate this at this time next year for a possible relocation. But unless you disagree, Dr. Breedlove.
No, sir. I think what we've been, the idea, I don't know if you've seen Apollo 13. All right. In Apollo 13, what happens is they're breathing too much carbon dioxide. And so what NASA brings in is all this equipment, and here's the problem, and figure it out. Teaching and learning department, Office of School Performance, our staff, we have very bright people that can figure out how to re-engage students. And if we take the gloves off and we get our hands dirty and figure out how to build a school where students spend 40% of the time learning English, math, science, social studies, then go out into the field and do the work 60% of the time, let's say. Imagine building community gardens in Monroe, where these students are the ones running this, going to the community and helping supply this to the community. Imagine going into the working with Duke Power, all right, on the solar farm and learning about solar and green energy. And being a part of that concept and doing something for Union County Public Schools, where these students are not only re-engaged in their own learning, but they're giving back civically into our community.
I remember my third point, and then I'll be quiet. My third one was what Dr. Breedlove is describing, and what we're really looking at is what a lot of school systems call a middle college. We have a great early college here, Union County Early College at SPCC, but what's being described in a lot of school systems is what's called a middle college. And a middle college is typically located on a college campus where students can go to a different kind of a setting. You live, you breathe, you abide by the college rules. You're not confined by the high school schedule or the high school structure, and you're given a lot more freedom, but it's a lot of integrated work and project-based. And I think, again, that kind of a concept might open us up next year to look at institutions that we already have great partners with, like Wingate. You know, would they be interested in helping us out with this kind of a concept? So anyway, the point is we've recognized this as a need to really strengthen, and but we believe we have more students that would want to participate in this kind of a program than are currently being afforded to because of space.
Well, let me just say, I think you've hit the nail on the head here. Now, this to me, now correct me if I'm wrong, this sounds like you're blending a little bit of traditional high school classroom work and trade school. You're getting closer to a trade school model. Yeah, for kids who are good with their hands, like to tinker with stuff, but they don't like to sit in a classroom all day and do math. Or no offense to math teachers out there, whatever. I think you're going to find there is more than a 60 student demand. I think there's going to be big numbers at every high school that's going to have a demand for this. And let me differentiate how, so I'm clear on this. Our current academies, let's say the Culinary Academy at Porter Ridge High, that's in by, you're a good student overall. You have your other classes, but you're also taking by application the Culinary Academy. This is for more, as I envision, a student who might struggle with some of the other classes. They may not qualify for one of our traditional academies because they struggle with the other classwork and their GPA just may not be that high. Is that a fair assumption?
Absolutely. That's exactly the type of student that we're looking for this program.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I think you have discovered a true need. And I think that the traditional system is trying to jam a square peg in a round hole. And by going out there and instead of making classes and make the kids take the classes, you're making the classes to fit the kids. That's exactly what this is doing. How would this interact with, let's take the auto shop class at Forest Hills. Would these students be integrated? They'd have a separate academy. They wouldn't be integrated into the current academy. Is that the way it would? Explain to me how the mechanics of how that would work.
They possibly could be integrated, but before we get to that, the idea is taking these larger problems and using the shop class to help solve some of the problem, whatever the product is that the students are required to develop to a problem. That is then those academies will be applied to help solve those problems. So they could be integrated in. That's the big picture item. Now all that could change as
you got to work out the nuts and bolts.
Yes, sir. But the idea is truly
I'll give you an example. So if this academy was at, say, a Forest Hills, then essentially and ideally you would have your core classes, your English, math, science, social studies, kind of integrated with your own teachers in a separate setting. So you wouldn't necessarily be in a regular Math 1 class,
right?
Because your curriculum is different,
right?
But when you go to the construction trade lab to solve your problem, there might be other students from that high school that are in there with you because they may be working on similar kind of concepts, as an example.
Okay.
And we're still using resources and teachers of South Providence that are based South Providence because many of these students need the social emotional support, the extra counseling, to get re-engaged in the celebration of students when they're successful. That's a large part of what we're talking about too. And South Providence does a very good job with that as well.
They're trained.
Dr. Hurley talked about, we're not adding resource or asking for additional resources. We want to apply the resources that we have into this concept, but yet have these students across our district and working on these products.
Do you think some of these classes would qualify for CTE funding to help support some of the?
Yes.
Okay. What may I ask what school you visited?
It was in Stanley County, their alternative program in Stanley County.
What do they call it?
It's Stanley County Learning Academy.
Oh, okay. Oh, so that's what.
I like UCLA a little bit better, but that's just me.
Stanley County Hallway.
How long have they had this program?
They don't have this particular program because when we visited, this idea came from a middle college concept, came from an alternative learning environment such as South Providence, and came from what they are doing there and how they run their program. It's a year-long program where students can only come in. It's an application program. So that is how they're doing it. But they are not doing it this way.
But there are certain concepts of that school that we're not doing, that like the application and like the year long, that we're trying to apply to this program.
So that brings me to the only question I have. Currently it's a application for 1 year.
Yes, ma'am.
Trying to plan forward, do you see this continuing as a 1-year application? Meaning, okay, so you apply for the first year and assuming it works, then they get first priority to continue the second, third, or fourth year. Because I think most CTE classes to get certifications in these different trades require at least 2 years, right?
Right. The idea is that initial application, and it's an automatic renewal for the students.
Okay,
that they
an
want to
automatic
stay.
renewal. Okay.
Well, we may have some that say this has been a great experience for a year, but I want to go back.
Go back.
We don't want to say, no, you can't do that.
Uh-huh.
But if for students that have said we'd want to continue in this kind of a setting, we should allow them to continue.
Okay.
Would you be able to apply as early as 9th grade or
Yes.
even 8th grade?
That would be ideal for students
Mhm.
that, have the
Identify.
red flags of poor attendance,
Uh-huh.
Discipline.
possibly some discipline issues, and more than likely there are discipline issues. Just the minor stuff is what we're
Right.
talking about. And then, of course, academic achievement.
So you're running with the ball on this. You're the lead man. So when I need to call somebody up and say, where are we on this? You're the man I call?
You can call me anytime. Yes, sir.
Well, I know I can do that, but I want to know if you're the one,
Yes, sir.
you're the quarterback on this deal.
On,
I will
Okay.
take that under the leadership of Dr. Julian. of
on
course.
this particular issue, and all three of these programs have assigned point people. And so these are the three. So yes, Dr. Breedlove is the assigned quarterback or wide receiver for this particular program. And he, again, we want to do this right. And I just think staff has told me that keeping the program where it is at South Providence for 1 more year is probably going to be our best bet. And that gives us the time to work with other partners, maybe a university, maybe other schools. Maybe you look at a different hub configuration across the county. We need to explore all of this, but we wanted to get the concept and the idea to the committee just to get your reaction, see what you thought. We're kind of excited about this one, but it's got a lot of potential, I think.
How about January of 2019? Not fall of 2019, January.
We would love to move forward as fast as we can. The issue that we run into with a January is that it does go against our yearly renewal. And so if we do
Okay.
a spring, if we have enough time to promote and market, teaching and learning is going to be pivotal. The department is going to be pivotal in this, and working with their great staff, Dr. Healy and our instructional coaches on really thinking outside the box. What have you always wanted to try and put together that we've really never had time to do in that? And so their knowledge and understanding of curriculum and unit that were cross-disciplinary units and problem-based learning is really going to be pivotal in this. So it's going to take some time to draw out an entire year of curriculum. And then who are the business partners that we want to jump in on this and be a part of that? It's just going to take time to get out and speak to them, sell the idea of the program.
Okay. Well, I had to ask.
Yes, sir.
So is there anything you need from this committee and the board to pursue this? Are you looking for any direction right now as far as this is just for information only, but what do you need from us to facilitate?
Well, what we would like to do is go ahead and build a true business model for this and what this would look like before we, obviously that we would like to go the green light to go ahead and move towards that and really plan this out and build this to be able to present back to you that sort of.
What we're looking for today is just your support or endorsement to say, charge forward. This is a good concept. It's a good idea. That's what we're looking for today. We'll be glad to come back to this committee and the full board in the fall and in the spring with an update on a regular basis. But today is just kind of letting the concept get out there and see if it's something you think you would support moving forward, just evaluating and exploring.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to offer a motion for this committee to provide its full support for the Union County Learning Academy and to provide any support as necessary to staff or resources to expedite for fall of 2019, the inaugural year of the Union County Learning Academy. I will so offer that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Helms. The last comment I will make is, definitely move forward, green light go. I just wanted to know, you mentioned Wingate University do you anticipate reaching out to them to consider partnering with them on this middle college, in addition to looking at other
Yes.
high schools?
I will be doing that.
So you will be speaking with Wingate?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, with a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, 4-0. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Certainly SPCC too.
Great work.
We also have a program, yes, that we need to share information with you. The program is called Avid, and we have 3 schools that are working at implementing this program. I've asked Ms. McKinnon to share just a few minutes regarding this program.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. So Avid will be looking at 3 schools. 3 schools have decided that they want to adopt this structure to increase college and career readiness among their students. And those 3 schools are East Union Middle School, Marshville Elementary, and Wingate Elementary. The Avid structure, Avid stands for Advancement via Individual Determination, and the structure contains 4 components. There's a leadership component, an instructional component, systems, as well as culture. We're excited because, first of all, it's important to note that Avid is not another program, if you will, that will be added. It's not one more thing to do. The structure in and of itself aligns with the current things that we have going on in schools to accelerate student learning, as well as motivation and enhancing activities toward college and career readiness that are currently going on in schools. A great benefit from Avid is a strong college-going culture on an Avid campus. Avid encourages students to think about college and career plans. It also allows principals to transform their school environments to reflect a college awareness and increase college experiences for students. So we are excited about partnering with universities to make sure those things happen. Another opportunity is for students to engage in goal setting toward achievement and college and career awareness. Avid closes the opportunity and access gap before it actually begins in secondary schools. So with the elementary program, it has we have the opportunity to close that access gap, and also in secondary schools, so that students have opportunities to make decisions and to know the academic preparation and foundational needs for college prior to having to make those decisions. Again, it promotes this college and career readiness for students who are traditionally underrepresented as well in higher education, and equips school communities to be able to put students on a path for college completion. So by participating in Avid, our schools will be able to participate in professional learning in the summer, as well as throughout the school year, and I'll refer to the packet that you have there before you. They'll learn, the school's leadership teams and teachers who will participate on these teams will learn about the structures for increasing student achievement in writing across the curriculum, reading across the curriculum, as well as inquiry and collaboration strategies. And they'll be working toward implementing cultures that impact mindsets for students taking on advanced courses, addressing the rigor in those courses, impacting positive relationships, and then again, having the opportunity to network with other schools.
So let me back up just for background information for the board. So when I was in Houston, all of our middle schools in that school system used Avid. And basically what Avid is a comprehensive framework to help students be truly engaged in these concepts of college and career readiness. And in partnership with those two departments here in this county, what you would look at is more experiential based, working with Navients and other resources that we have to really make sure that all teachers understand what they need to do to help kids become college and career ready, not just your CTE teachers or others. And so Mr. Sanders, the principal at East Union, if you'll remember, I worked with in Houston, approached me earlier in the year and said, hey, this is something as a concept that I really liked when we in the middle school in Houston that he worked in. Is there any way that we could explore this for Union County? So we brought Avid into a principals meeting and let them do a training for principals and said, hey, who is interested? This is kind of like Leader in Me. It cannot be a top-down mandate. The school system, I would not propose to say all middle schools have to do this. You have to have leadership buy-in in order to make sure that it's implemented effectively. And I just don't believe that we should do that with a program like this or a framework. And one of the lessons that I learned when I was in Houston was the idea of vertical alignment, that it really is geared towards middle and elementary schools. And when you can get that vertical alignment, that is going to pay dividends, because as you move from elementary to middle or middle to high, you have staff that are using the same language. Again, kind of like Leader in Me. If you could have Leader in Me in your feeder middle schools where your elementary kids are going, that would make a whole lot of sense because you're using the same concepts, languages, et cetera. So as a result of that discussion and training, you had 3 principals that said, we really want to explore this next year as kind of a 3-year pilot. And that was why we had Marshville, Wingate, that both feed into East Union Middle School. And so they really wanted to do this. They're gung-ho about it. They have a staff that has gotten complete buy-in. But those are the 3. And there aren't any others that are out there that have said that they wanted to. And again, I don't think we should force it onto folks. So I just wanted to give the background as to how this came about, why we're considering it, and why only 3 schools.
Okay, so you definitely answered my question on how 2 elementaries were chosen and 1 middle. So that explanation helps a lot. Is there, assuming that this goes well, is this like a 3-year contract or why are we looking at 3 years? Is that?
So the pricing that's before you is set in a 3-year proposal format. It certainly can extend beyond 3 years. It is not just for 3 years, but the idea is for the structure to be embedded within the school culture.
Okay. Do you foresee a need to for this to go into a high school, or is Avid not appropriate for a high school setting?
Avid is also appropriate for high school. It was intentionally designed for middle schools. They've expanded to elementary and high schools more recently. I think in talking with Dr. Plew at Forest Hills High School as an example, he wanted to get a few years under the belt at these 3 schools to evaluate the extent to which it would fit at the high school level. He wasn't as familiar with it as Mr. Sanders and the other 2 principals. But yeah, I think ideally it would be great to have it comprehensively through that whole cluster and or others. I think that was also why other schools' principals were a little bit hesitant, is we've never had Avid in the school system. And you've got folks that really want to say, let's try this out in these 3 schools, see how that goes. And I'll tell you, what works well here is when you have principals and teachers that can sit down with other principals and teachers and say, this is why you should do this. This is how it works. This is the benefits we've seen with kids, as opposed to any of us telling them that you have to do it. So these 3 principals and school leadership teams are really excited to explore this.
And Mrs. McKinney, if you don't mind repeating yourself, when you started the introduction, you mentioned leadership and culture. What were the other points that you said Avid was strong?
Instructional framework as well as systems.
What do you mean by systems?
So the systems are continuous monitoring and improvement in instruction and academic supports.
Okay.
These are the systems that will impact student outcomes that principals and their teams would put into place. And again, these are systems that we have in place, but with Avid, it would certainly enhance some of the things that we're doing already with these particular concepts.
Okay, thank you.
And am I reading this correctly? This will qualify for our EPIC grant funding?
Yes, for professional development. So we will utilize EPIC grant funds for the professional development.
Are you looking for a
This is
support for the action from the committee to support moving forward with the program or to report to the board favorably?
this is an action to send to the full board.
I'll make a motion. I'm sorry.
So the sole source, the reason you're getting this information is there's a sole
Sole
source
source.
for professional development that will go to the board. And that's the next item, but we wanted to tell you about the program so
Okay.
you would know certainly about the sole source. So the sole source is what's going to need to go to the board.
Can we knock both those out? Just make a motion to accept the sole source and
Sure.
go?
The sole source is it's not Avid.
Oh,
It's a different agenda item.
so this is not on the agenda?
This is under academic programming. The academic
Okay,
programming
gotcha,
at South
gotcha.
Providence
Okay.
and Avid.
And then when you look at the sole source material resource, there's a professional development we have to get. And I've got that in the next item.
Okay.
So it's in your packet.
So these 3-year totals, this entire total will come from the EPIC grant.
Not the entire total. The total for the professional development will come from the EPIC grant.
Oh, that's why it didn't add up. Okay.
Okay, then how do we know, like, let's look at year one, the 38,109. How do we know what's EPIC grant or not EPIC grant, and where's the balance coming from?
The schools will utilize school funds. School teams will make the decisions about how they fund the remaining part, which is the library package of materials for their, to support the curriculum, as well as the Avid membership. So they will make those decisions about the additional funds.
So let's look at the 38,109.
Yes.
How much is professional development?
If you take a look at the middle, so the second section there, where it says Avid Summer Institute,
Okay,
that's
okay.
the projected cost for the schools to participate in the Summer Institute.
It's the largest cost.
That's the largest cost. And the annual Avid membership also includes professional learning throughout the school year that is included in the membership. So schools will have access to over 66 different professional development modules where they can either go to those or bring those modules to their campuses for professional development.
Okay. I'm still not following.
I think what
Okay, so which one of these is being funded by the EPIC grant, and the other money I assume would come out of local dollars?
Yes.
So which one is local dollars and which one is EPIC grant?
Okay, so the first part, the annual Avid membership, would
That-
be
local.
funded from local, yes. And if
Okay.
the schools decide to use their Title I funds for that, they are able to do that.
Okay. Then the Summer
The Summer
Institute,
Institute is EPIC funding.
EPIC.
The library package would be local or federal, but based at the school. And then the district leadership training would be EPIC as well.
Okay, thank you. Got it.
Sorry about that.
No.
So as far as an action item, we're just looking to recommend to the full board to implement Avid at this point, and then we direct the funding in the sole source.
Action item today will need to approve the sole source. And that is the sole source that has to go to the board.
And that's a separate item.
That's the
you
next.
say?
Yes,
It's the
sir.
next item.
It's the next item.
So this was under academic programming and it was information only.
Information only.
Okay.
And then the sole source is your action.
Okay. Okay. Are there any more questions about Avid? If not, we can move along.
Thank you very much. And the last item in this area, Mr. Sides had asked us to look into Miller's Crew. If there's anything you want to say up front, I can give you just an update on where we are with that.
I'll just, this is a program for EC classrooms to learn, EC students to learn what I would call real-world job skills. I have talked with the owner who has an autistic child, and they've set up different, basically working stations, including a working coffee cafe and other job-ready training opportunities inside the classroom. And it is a nonprofit foundation. It is most anxious to work with us without cost to our school system and implement it, at the very least, a pilot project in one of our EC classrooms.
That is correct. And it would add to our efforts of our transition to adulthood students and providing job-embedded skills. Ms. Linda Little already leads a lot of work in that area. Certain businesses like Quincy's or Chick-fil-A offer field experiences. This offers some field experiences structured in the school. I spoke with Mr. Molnar. His wife was not available. You spoke with his wife. They're very interested in giving us more information. However, they said they would like to set up the meeting. They're not at the point that they want to meet as yet because they're still looking at their resources and their processes. So I did speak with him. He has my contact information, and he will want to set up a meeting to explain more. But I have discussed our interest in how they applied this in Cumberland County schools, and they are looking at expanding through this nonprofit.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for the resource, Mr. Sides.
Okay.
Mhm.
So that concludes academic programming. And that brings us to sole source material resources.
Okay. We have 3 items in sole source that need to go before the Board of Education. The first is the Avid program that was just explained. Do you want to approve these all at one time, Ms. Mayor? Okay, do them in bulk. So the first one you see is the Avid that gives the background on what was just explained for the total program cost of $40,680.95. And then the letters are attached to that. Any questions?
And so this is just for 1 year, not the 3 years?
That's for your first year, yes,
1
ma'am.
year. But does it lock you into 2 and 3? Or,
I have not.
No,
I have
okay.
not
It's
seen that.
designed to be a 3-year implementation,
Uh-huh.
but it would have to be an annual review and
Okay.
cost
okay,
distribution.
so this is just for year 1?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Our contracts department reviews this and looks at, the 3 years, and if there were a reason we wanted to get out, they look at that when they approve the contract piece. The next is for professional development for iStation. iStation is used within our dual language programs for reading and literacy in Spanish that is delivered through the iPads we have at the primary level. We want teachers to be able to utilize this tool more effectively, so they would like to provide staff development this summer. And we would do that through the iStation company, and that cost is listed there at a total of $3,190.76. And the third one is professional development that will continue with 12 of our targeted schools. 13 schools we have in the district that are high priority or Title I. One of those schools, Rockrest, looks at their own professional development when it comes to PBI, positive behavior intervention systems, as well as discipline. They do some individual work, but we have 12 schools that have been working with Safe and Civil Schools regarding support with classroom management, motivating students, and academic engagement. The second phase of that training this year is CHAMPS. And the CHAMPS training would be offered to these schools. That would continue for the upcoming year through funding from the EPIC grant. And it's a total of $60,847.50.
Okay, since we had a learning lesson with Avid,
Yes, ma'am.
does the full total come from the EPIC grant or
It does.
the full amount?
It does.
Okay.
All of that is available through the EPIC grant.
I will make a motion that we recommend to the full board approval of all three of the sole source requests, Safe and Civil Schools, iStation, and Avid.
Mrs. Helms, okay, thank you very much. Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Okay, that brings us to reproductive health and safety parent notification.
We shared in our last meeting that we're in the process of looking at revising materials and processes. And we always include the curriculum committee in this process regarding reproductive health and safety. We are not discussing any content changes or standards changes today or anything with content. What we want to discuss with you and just share with you is the information regarding parent notification. In our program, parents have the right to opt out of programming and make choices. And the feedback we receive from parents and through community feedback is maybe the process that we have notified parents might be confusing. So I tasked Ms. Garner with looking at what could be a simple way of giving parents information on making choices. Because again, we want to be sure our parents understand the choice they're making when they're talking about the deliverables of the program. So you're going to see documentation today that's going to show the standards. Again, there are no changes in the standards or curriculum at this point. This is just parent notification, and I'll let you share about this, Ms. Carter.
Good morning. So what I have given you this morning, I've given you 3 different documents, just 2 of them as examples, and then one of them is the proposed parent permission form. So I want to direct you first to the one for parents of 6th grade students. There is a slight change from the previous form. So previously what you had is on letterhead for parents of 6th grade students. This is what has been board approved to date. And what it includes is basically an opportunity for parents to opt in or opt out of the entire piece of this, okay? And then on the next page, it includes information about the lessons. So what we've moved to, if you look at the first page of the new document that you have, that's not branded yet, once, if approved, would have the Union County letterhead and things on it. But what you notice is that we now have 3 options for 6th grade. So this is a change. And the reason that we made 3 options for 6th grade, we met with a group of health teachers. Ms. Trawick was part of this as well. We had our school nurses. There's a couple of different reasons. The piece that we've pulled out as option 2, if you notice on here, the more restrictive, is just about the understanding puberty piece. Before, parents either had option, what you see on here as option 1 or option 3, which was all or nothing. The understanding puberty piece is really very similar to what students learn if they choose the piece with the nurses in 4th and 5th grade, girls in 4th grade and boys in 5th grade, where they really just learn about the changes that are happening in their body. This is previously what was lesson 1. So there's a couple different things we've done on the permission form. Instead of having the full descriptive words of exactly what's going to be taught in each of those lessons, we've really just listed the standards that are covered. What's going to be taught, that narrative piece will still be included and will still be available in the media center if parents are interested in the narrative of what's taught in each lesson. But a couple different pieces to conserve paper, trying to make it on one sheet to make it very clear for parents what they're looking at. And really to refer back to where's this coming from? So this is coming directly from the state standards. So we've added this option. So that was the first piece, was to give parents the option if they just want their students to learn that piece about their own body and not talking about other pieces. They have that option 2 now. And then the other piece is it makes it consistent with what we do in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, because there are 3 options and have been 3 options for 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So it just makes it consistent across all 4 grade levels with that. So that's what you will see for 6th grade. The language that's at the top stays the same with the exception for where it says guidelines are provided in attached documents. We took that out because now the standards are actually listed on the permission form. Whereas if you notice the 6th grade permission form before, it just said, I want it in or I want it out. And I think that, the term abstinence until marriage curriculum was a Union County term. And so to make that more clear, we've just called it the least restrictive, the more restrictive, and the most restrictive. And then we list the titles of the different sections for those pieces. So we've got the understanding puberty and the making healthy decisions. So that's kind of the overview for 6th grade. And if you look, 7th and 8th and 9th follow suit when we have listed the specific standards that are taught in each grade level.
And on
Okay.
that, of course, the far right would be a parent choosing for their child to opt out of the program completely.
Right. And then if you get to 8th grade, the one piece that I want to point out is that in the least restrictive 8th and 9th grade, in the least restrictive option, there is one standard that has a PowerPoint that's taught by the school nurse, and that is no different than before. We've just merely indicated that on the permission form. And before it was on the guidelines that went with it was in the narrative. So we felt like putting it on the actual permission form. So if you look at 8th grade, 8 ICR 0.3.2, it has an asterisk by it, which you can see at the bottom. It's taught by the school nurse. And we also put it in parentheses right after, just so that was very clear. One of the other pieces was, if you look at the 7th grade form, that's the other packet that I gave you. And I just gave you 6th and 7th so you could kind of see an example. 6th because it was changing, and 7th so that you could kind of see where the confusion comes from. There are 3 different options, but the way that they're presented, we had a lot of parents that were confused with, I'm choosing this or this. And so sometimes parents thought that they had to choose both of the options on the right. They really weren't 100% sure what they were opting into. So we really wanted to make it very clear that you have 3 choices. These are the standards associated with each one. And if you choose the most restrictive option, you're opting out of all of it. It's just completely grayed out. So we tried to make it very clear for parents so that they would understand. The other piece that we had, if you notice on all of the forms, the 6th and the 7th grade, in bold, it says, indicate your selection, return it. Failure to return it means you're going to receive the least restrictive option. So what this turned into was a lot of parents didn't return it because they thought, well, I want my kid to be in the least restrictive option, so I just won't return it. Well, then the teachers are required to contact the parents multiple times to get their form. And the intent of the parents was, I want them to have the least restrictive option.
Because the students weren't turning it in.
Well, and really, and what we've heard feedback from parents as well is, well, I wanted them to have the least restrictive. It says if I don't return it, that's what they're going to have. So it resulted in teachers having to make multiple phone calls, whether it was because the student wasn't returning it or because the parent said, I'm not going to turn it in because I'm interested in the least restrictive.
Right.
So what we tried to do,
these were being mailed home.
and they still are.
Correct.
They still are.
Policy states that.
It's in policy. And so that's something that our schools have said, do we have to continue to mail them?
Yes.
And
They do.
as of right now, we do because it's in policy.
Okay. And do we ever foresee this becoming electronic, or it will always be mailed?
So as far as mailing it, I mean, I think that's something that if you are interested in looking at, can we save the postage and not necessarily mail it? We can look at what options would we be comfortable with to make sure that parents did indeed receive the form.
Exactly.
And we could come up with a protocol. I do think, though, that, because we want the signature on this, we would probably send it home and have that paper on file. But it's something we could definitely look at,
Okay.
send the form protocol. And we did still leave on here at the very bottom, please return it to your child's teacher. So we were very clear, please return it. And we said, if no form is returned and attempts to reach a parent or guardian are unsuccessful, your child will be placed in option 1. So that's consistent with the language that's on here, but we tried to make it a little bit more clear that we really do want the form back.
Can I make a suggestion?
Absolutely.
Make that font a little bigger.
Okay. Okay. And we have it at the top too. Please indicate your selection. It's bold, it's underlined, and return this form to your child's teacher. So we did put that up there. And then at the bottom, we put that, but we'll make that bigger.
But again, we're leaving it up to the student to return it to the teacher, as
So-
opposed to mailing it back in or an electronic. I'm still seeing how kids can get around this.
So if the student does not return the form, we do have parents mail the form in.
Okay.
Okay. Some parents choose to mail it. We do have, and when we don't get forms back, teachers make multiple attempts to contact the parents. And so, I mean, they have to document that they have attempted on multiple efforts to contact the parents.
Is it
And
the homeroom teacher, or
It's
the
usually the PE teacher.
PE,
Help
and
the
PE.
PE teacher.
Okay.
Yes. And, the reason that we mail the forms home is because we want to ensure that the parents know that the form came home. Getting the form back, because it comes home to the parents in the mail. So getting the form back, sometimes the students, I don't know, at that point, it becomes an issue between the parent and the student, not necessarily the parent and the school. But the teacher does make multiple attempts to contact the parent. And they use whatever communication methods are available in PowerSchool, whether it's phone number, email address, they make multiple attempts. And they document that.
So this is the parent notification piece we would like to follow for the upcoming year and provide to schools, and hopefully it's going to be easier for parents to understand and make the choices. And we just wanted to run this by you to see if there were any questions or concerns. Hopefully it's going to be clear for them.
So it is very clear. Thank you very much. So why did we drop the abstinence until marriage? I understand that you said that was a Union County term. I think it's going to really throw parents off when they no longer see that.
Well, so we didn't drop the title of the curriculum. I mean, according to the state, it's this is part of the interpersonal communication and relationship strand in the standards. And so instead, what we did was, instead of calling the whole curriculum abstinence until marriage, because it gets confusing if the title of the curriculum doesn't always match what students are learning. Because when you get into 8th and 9th grade, if you choose the least restrictive, it is going to be a focus on abstinence, but they are going to learn about what happens with diseases and different things like this. And so what we decided was that it would be important to list the titles of the lessons and the units on here, as opposed to calling the whole curriculum something that could be confusing for parents. Because if you opt into something that's called abstinence until marriage, yes, all of the messages are going to be, according to the standards, this is risky behavior and you want to abstain until marriage. But I think where the confusion could come is that people think then they're not going to learn about any of the things that are risks associated with it. The how to avoid unwanted pregnancy, for example. And there are methods in the least restrictive once you get into 8th grade that students learn, that you do learn birth control methods. And so that's something that if the title of the curriculum is abstinence until marriage, it could be misleading. So instead we have the titles choosing abstinence, avoiding health risks when you get to 8th grade. Same is true in 9th grade. And in 6th grade, the titles really were congruent with what the lessons are that we've had approved before. And in 7th grade, and I went out of order just because of where I was, 7th grade, it's very similar. We have choosing abstinence and avoiding health risks. So, we didn't totally remove the word, but I think that we were trying to be a little bit more clear in that when you get into the least restrictive option, that you're going to have a piece that's about avoiding health risks in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And what does that mean? In 7th grade, you're looking at sexually transmitted diseases. You're looking at some ways to prevent that. In 8th grade, you're looking at FDA-approved contraceptives. And that is because there is a risk. That is a health risk. If you are outside of a marriage relationship and you engage in these activities. So I think that's the message, is that, yes, there's a piece of it that is about abstinence, but there's also a piece of it that's specific to health risks. So we just wanted to be more clear.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have to know off the top of your head, across the board, all grades, what percentage of people opt out totally?
I don't know the percentage off the top of my head. I will say that it is not a large percentage of students. It's not a large percentage. It's usually a couple of kids per health class. So you're talking about
10% or less.
Maybe 5%
Probably.
or less.
probably.
Okay.
So I think for the parents that are choosing the least restrictive, we just wanted to be very clear, because we do have a large percentage of our parents that choose the least restrictive option. And so we wanted to be very clear as to what it is that your child is going to be taught.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This goes out around the beginning of school?
So yes, it is mailed out. In fact, one of the reasons that we're trying to get it in before the end of the year is a lot of times our schools, because they want to give parents, the law says that students have to have a full 60 days, or parents rather, have to have a full 60 days to review curriculum resources before it's taught. So any of our schools that teach this right in August, they want the parents to have the letter so that they know that they have all summer and get that 60 days to come and review the curriculum. So any changes that we make to the curriculum won't be able to be implemented in schools until that 60-day waiting period has happened. And it really depends on when these courses are taught. In some of our middle schools, they wait until the last week of school and do all their reproductive health and safety at the very end of school. Some of them do it on a rotation. It really just depends on the school. So for some of our schools, it wouldn't be a problem at all to change curriculum resources. And for some of our schools that teach health as the rotations, as the students go through that rotation, they would potentially, if we have some materials that get approved at the beginning of the next school year, they would have to use the old resources that have been available and then wait the 60 days and use the new resources once that 60-day period has transferred. And that's something that once we bring those resources to you hopefully in August, we will make sure that we work with those teachers to say, you can't use the new resources unless you've had that 60-day waiting period for parents.
Okay.
But right now, we're just looking at the permission form.
It's just
Okay.
permission.
Okay.
And reason, some of our schools like to mail that at the end of the year with their report cards because it's already going out as a mailing.
Mhm.
And so sometimes they just fold it right in there to save a little postage. Yeah. And as you notice, before our 9th grade was 3 pages, I think 8th grade was 3 pages. And so now they'll have 1 page to send home. So that'll also save money with paper and
Perfect.
postage.
Perfect.
And again, the narrative will still be available at the school for them to view along with all of the resources and the lessons.
Okay. Nice.
Thank you
Any
very
questions?
much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will now have a discussion regarding graduation honors.
So from the policy committee, it was requested that we circle back up with the curriculum committee to discuss graduation honors, specifically talking about valedictorian and recognizing salutatorians. And so we have done some digging. I guess I want to offer a history lesson or brief this morning regarding what we have found in Union County Public Schools. I went back in our archive to the earliest program of studies that we had in 2008 and 2009. And in that time, we still had for graduation honors the recognition of summa cum laude, magna, and cum laude. Mr. Breedlove went back into his notes in the secondary office when he was working, and he found it as early as 2004, 2005. Dr. Stegall was the academic superintendent at that time. Dr. Davis was the superintendent. So I went into what we call Dr. Stegall's files in the back rooms. I've looked through all the files. I don't see any documentation regarding exactly when that, as well as we do not have any current sitting high school principals that would have been a high school principal at that time. Mr. Bowers and Mr. Breedlove were principals when this began, but we don't have any that were principals before. When the shift was made that we did not recognize valedictorian and salutatorian, when we moved to the honors, the Latin honors recognition.
So if I understood you correctly, even as far back as 2004, 2005, you were not seeing the valedictorian, salutatorian recognition.
That is what Mr. Breedlove said he saw. I have found
Okay.
it in writing as early as 2008, 2009.
Oh, you did? You did find it?
That was the graduation honor. So the change was made prior to 2008, 2009. In 2008, 2009, it is the same
It's
that we have
still the
today.
Latin.
Summa cum laude, magna, and cum, the same guideline we follow today. I found all the way back to 2008, 2009.
Okay.
So we met with principals on a group of high school principals on May 15th, as well as I had some discussion with principals just regarding rationale and what were reasons that they felt, that this was not honored, or some of the challenges or opportunities that come with looking at the valedictorian and salutatorian. Of course, some of the finals from the state, if there's a state exam, may require constructed responses, or we have run into situations where there's been a delay in receiving the scores because it like many times goes all the way up to the very end when you're talking about class rank, when you're processing exams and getting everything completed and trying to do that before graduation takes place. So sometimes there's a delay from the state now with tests because there are more state tests that we provide, like North Carolina finals, that have to be given from the state that were not given prior to this change. And those, of course, are scored through the accountability office. Several say that because for their honors, they're competing basically against themselves because they have a chance to score within their GPA for recognizing with honors, higher honors, or highest honors. They have the opportunity that students may not feel the pressure from GPA in that class rank system versus if they wanted to take a course that they may be interested in for their career but may have a lower GPA, that did not weigh into the factors. Some principals indicated that was a value in the current system, and actually relieving stress from students, particularly those that their feedback with pressure that was added with the competition factor. I did look across the state. There are some school systems that recognize valedictorian and salutatorian as well as the Latin honors. Guilford County is one of those, to where they do have both of those. They use systems that do recognize, but then there are also systems across the state that have moved away from the valedictorian and salutatorian. Wake County, Johnson County, Wilson, and then Virginia Beach and Virginia were some schools that I found. At graduations, there should be no formal recognition of valedictorian and salutatorian. However, I did speak with one principal yesterday who said that his top students do sit on the stage and are part of the program. I said, well, are they recognized as valedictorian and salutatorian? He said no, but because they're the top two, many of the students know why they're up there. So there have been some, or principals may incorporate them as a part of giving the speeches in the program. I know at Forest Hills, they have about 6 student speeches, and usually you'll find your top graduates that are a part of that speech. So it may not be recognized, but many times students know at some schools. So that's basically background information that we have found in this process.
I wonder how Guilford County manages to get their state testing in time for graduation.
Well, I think it's like anything else. You have to make the best decisions you can at the point. You know, you hope to get it back as quickly as possible, but it may be at the very last minute that if you have to have it for graduation, you can't include that.
Yeah,
I know. Exactly.
What you got.
Yeah, you
I know in other
systems.
systems, we did this, we would literally have your senior counselor that would be at the graduation location, and the top couple of kids were told it may be you, it may be you, it may be you. And leading up to like 5 minutes before you walk down that aisle, you're told you're it, because it was literally up to the last minute. And so that was kind of the issues that I think a lot of our high school principals said, is the timing of this. We would hate to say, you know, Drew, you're the valedictorian, prepare your speech, and then have to turn back and say, never mind. That was really the number one issue that they talked about, but it can be done. Clearly other systems are doing that.
Okay.
And of course, as competitive as our students are of what's available, it could be, you know, out to the very minuscule points, down to the tens,
Usually.
hundreds,
Yeah.
thousands.
Yeah.
So I'd like to ask you to reach out to Guilford and others that are doing this and ask them how they do the calculation. I think the policy committee here is looking at a recognizing excellence policy for considerations to be folded into that. So before we have that conversation, can you explore how other systems are generating that calculation and managing the recognition?
Yes, sir. I can do that.
Yes.
I can reach out to CMS as well.
Does CMS recognize valedictorian and
From my
salutatorian?
research, yes, they do.
Okay. That would be nice. Okay, thank you. Okay, next meeting date and action items to the Board of Education.
So for action items, instructional resources will go to the board, as well as the sole source materials and resources. I will give those, and those will be on the agenda. Or
Okay.
on consent.
On consent,
Yeah.
okay.
You made a vote for approval of the Avid program, so I'm not sure if that's going to require that an explanation go on consent agenda as well.
Because the sole source is going to the board, that's going to take care of that.
Okay.
So
Right, yeah, I think
we can
so.
discuss
Yeah.
it if we need to, but it'll be under the sole source.
All right.
Okay, so those two.
And then would be your next meeting date if you wish to schedule that. I don't know, vacations. We, of course, typically hold the last Thursday of the month. The last Thursday of the month will be brushing up against the 4th of July week.
Anticipate any business at this point?
I'd like to recommend, if it's okay, that we look at the last week of July, if that's the last Thursday. To your point, Ms. Merrill, if we need to come back with the South Providence discussion and we feel like we're at a place where we can or can't and want an update before the start of the school year, I don't think we'll have a need for a committee meeting, Dr. Jones, in June, do you? But if we could put a tentative hold on that last
July.
week of July, the
Okay.
4th Thursday,
Yes,
just
sir.
as a hold right now.
We can do that.
Okay, so July 26th at 9 o'clock. Understanding we're not, let's see, July 26th, 9 o'clock is our next meeting. Okay. If there are no other items to discuss, I'll accept.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you, everyone.